Hello and good afternoon to everyone here watching us. My name is Shubhangi and I'm from Arpan. And today we're here for an awareness session on understanding child sexual abuse. So today we'll be understanding the basic aspects of what is child sexual abuse, what are the things that can happen, how does it happen, what kind of impact it can have on children, as well as in case a child comes to us and asks for help or tells us that they've been experiencing something unsafe. In that case, what can be done? So before we go on and talk about the issue in detail, I would like to introduce the organization that I am here from. Arpan is a Mumbai-based organization, and we've been working on the issue of child sexual abuse for the past 13 plus years now. Um, we work in various aspects of child sexual abuse, where we work directly with children and uh, equip them with knowledge, skills, and attitudes so that they can protect themselves. Along with that, we also work with parents and teachers so that they are aware about child sexual abuse and can respond to children in an appropriate manner. Along with that, we also train individuals, social workers, teachers, and mental health professionals so that we as a society, we as support system can empower more people so that they can go on and work with more children, work with more adults so that we as a society can create a safe space for our children all around us. Along with that, at Arpan, we also provide psychotherapeutic support to people who have undergone or experienced any unsafe situation in their childhood or have undergone child sexual abuse as children. Uh, Other than that, we also have various resources so that people can read, understand the issue more, work with children, and in general, be able to spread this information, break the taboo that is around the issue of child sexual abuse. And today is a really good day to do this because it's today's International Children's Day, and what better day to start talking about child safety and equip ourselves so that we can support children better. So let's go on then and understand this issue better. You can also reach out to us on our various social media platforms. And if you have any questions, you can write to us there, or you can write to us on our email addresses that are there on our website. So we hope that our engagement is not just limited to this session, but we can engage even post this session. So let's go on and understand what is child sexual abuse. So before we move on, um, there is an ongoing situation that we all are living in, a pandemic that's been going on. And I think that's one of the reasons why this session is happening in such a way, where you are sitting across the screen, I'm sitting across the screen, and we're talking about this issue. Otherwise, I think we would be in a space where we would see each other and talk about this issue. But currently, because of this pandemic, we are in a situation where we are in a new normal of a sort. So, because of Corona, a lot of new changes have come in. We are experiencing a new normal altogether, and along with that, have come into play in our lives as well. New anxieties regarding us getting infected, or someone who is close to us or dear to us getting infected. Losing jobs has become uh, one area that is again causing a lot of anxiety to a whole lot of us. And in past, when such pandemics or when such epidemics have come, it was observed that the part of our society that was vulnerable has become more vulnerable. In this situation, we can say children who are a vulnerable section of our society have become more vulnerable. And that's the silent pandemic that we're talking about. So yes, this coronavirus and COVID-19, this pandemic, everybody is talking about, but the silent pandemic that our children are undergoing, our children are going through, nobody is talking about it right now. So because of the ongoing pandemic, because of the ongoing lockdown, a lot has changed for our children as well. The places that they felt they were their safe places are not safe anymore. Home is not safe anymore. Because sometimes the abuse could be happening right at home. Yeah. Other than that, economic insecurity, poverty-related stress, all of that has increased. And inadvertently, what happens is when I can't express my stress in any other situation or in a right form, this stress gets redirected towards the children and comes out in the form of abuse or violence. Uh, World over, 150 crore children are out of school, and within the country, 32.1 crore children are out of school. And there are also uh, assumptions, or there are also people foreseeing in the future that this will lead to a whole lot of children dropping out of school, children being pushed into child marriages, or children being pushed into labor work. Uh, and because of the pandemic, because children not being in school, because children are in a situation where they can't access uh, the basic necessities, like for example, a child having access to some NGO, some helplines, children having access to health services, or child care institutions. All of this has been affected. Yeah? And now, why we are talking about this? We're talking about this because this entire situation, the kind of environment this has brought here for our children, it has created a very strong ground for child abuse to increase. So it's not that these things are affecting or these things are happening in isolation. These are also creating a situation where abuse can increase or abuse can happen. Yeah? Now that we've talked about children and their safety, let's also talk about how it's affecting us. Staying emotionally healthy is very important for every one of us. And if you look into ourselves, if we reflect upon how we have been in these past 7-8 months now, the mental health has been in a very bad state sometimes. Anxiety being something that has affected a lot of us. Anxiety or fear, or just being worried that, oh my God, is everything is going to be all right? And to be able to deal with the situation, to be able to deal with all the oncoming challenges, being healthy, being emotionally all right is so very important. And that's why, as an organization, we put in a lot of emphasis on self-care. Very sorry about the background noise. Yeah, I hope I'm audible now. Yes. So as an organization, we pay a lot of attention to self-care, like taking care of ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with taking care of ourselves. It's not selfish at all. Yeah. When we don't take care of ourselves, it can very easily lead to burnout. And being burned out, having no energy, no passion, feeling stressed or anxiety constantly, again, it's not going to help us. It's not going to help the people around us either. And that's why taking care of yourself, taking care of ourselves is so important. And these are the things that you can do for yourself. As simple as, going for that walk, talking to somebody who makes you feel happy, or who lets you be yourself. Yeah. Saying no to things that you don't want to do or you can't do right now. Drinking a lot of water. Yoga, meditation, maybe therapy. If you want, you can also go for counseling. And again, there's nothing wrong with going for therapy to take care of yourself. Yeah. So doing things that will make you feel good, that will make you feel happy, do them. Do them why? So that we can take care of ourselves. And if we are okay, if we are healthy and in a good state of mind, we are of more value. We can add more value to our lives and in the lives of people whom we love. So don't forget to take care of yourself. And with that, what we'll do is, wherever you are right now, sit in a comfortable position. Yeah. I hope you all are sitting in a comfortable position, and we're going to do a small activity. It's called elephant breathing. So I'll show you how it's done, and it's just one of the ways you can relax. Only one of the ways. There are various other activities listed on our website, www.arpan.org.in. You can directly go on our website and under COVID resources, you can check these activities and see what works for you. Yeah? So I hope you all are in a comfortable position, and what we'll do is we'll spread our hands and hold them like this. Something imitating the elephant's trunk in a way. So what we'll do, when we take our hands up, we'll breathe in, we'll hold them for a second or two, and then gradually or slowly breathe out. Yeah. So let's do it once, and we can move on to our session. Yeah. So let's breathe in. Take a deep breath in. Hold it for a moment, and then gradually breathe out. The idea is to focus on our breathing here, because when we do that, it's been observed that when we focus on our breathing and when we take deep breaths, it helps us relax. So on that note, don't forget to take care of yourself. If we are okay, healthy, only then we can support or help people who are around us. Yeah? All right. So before we move on and understand the issue of child sexual abuse better, there's one ground rule that we'll be following. The information that we'll be sharing is not meant for children. So in case there are children around you, please use the headphone. In case that's not possible, then if you can move to another place where children are not there. Because the information that we'll be sharing is very appropriate for adults, but not at all appropriate for children. So keeping that in mind, either you can use your headphones or move to a place where children can't hear our conversation or what I'll be sharing with you in this session. All right, so let's move on and understand child sexual abuse better. So before we go on, let's understand who is a child. So when we talk about in terms of legal definition, when we talk in terms of understanding child sexual abuse, any individual below the age of 18 is considered a child. Yes, a 16-year-old is more mature than a 10-year-old for sure, but in the eyes of the law, any individual below the age of 18 is a child. Yeah, I hope you all are with me here. And do our children need rights? Do they need rights? A lot of us may have these thoughts that why do children need rights? I mean, they have us, they have so many people around them. Why do they need rights? They need rights. Why? Because children are vulnerable. Children are vulnerable. Why? Because they are dependent on external agencies for some external people, external agencies, so that their needs are fulfilled. Yeah? So children need rights because they are dependent on others. Because anybody whom they are dependent upon can easily violate their laws. They can violate their rights. And because of that, it's very important that children have rights, and children, they do have rights. And I would really encourage you all to go on and read about United Nations Convention on Rights of Children, or you can just Google UNCRC. It's a wonderful document for all of us to read and understand what are the rights that children have. Okay. So moving on to our topic for the day. Let's understand what is child abuse before we understand what is child sexual abuse. So what is child abuse? Child abuse is an act resulting in actual or potential harm to the child's health, survival, or development or dignity in the context of a relationship of responsibility, trust, or power. Now, what does it mean? If anybody who is more powerful than the child, who's responsible for the child's well-being, whom the child trusts, when someone in such a relationship or such a position does anything that harms or hurts the child's health, their survival, their development, or their dignity, it will be considered as child abuse. Yeah, and not necessary that there has to be only actual harm. Even if it has the potential to harm the child, even then it will be considered as child abuse. And there are various forms of child abuse. One thing that we all need to keep in mind is child abuse is not accident. It's not something that happens accidentally, or it's not something that just that person did by mistake. Oh, I didn't know, I didn't understand. Child abuse is always intentional. There would be an intent to hurt or harm the child. Yeah. So let's look at what are the different forms of abuse that are there. One form of abuse is physical abuse. I'm sure that you all are aware about it. So any kind of hitting, or harming the child's body, making the child go hungry, making the child stand for really long hours, all of that will be considered as physical abuse. Yeah. Emotional ill treatment, talking to the child in a way that is disrespectful, insulting the child, calling the child names, comparing the child. Yeah. That would be emotional ill treatment, because again, words, they may not harm the child's body, but they definitely harm the child's mind, or they hurt the child's feelings, and that's why it's emotional ill treatment. Sexual abuse, which we will be talking about in detail in a while. And neglect, though it's a silent abuse. Like, you'll have to really pay attention that it is happening. For example, a child who comes to school without a tiffin box every day, that is a sign that something's off, and maybe the family is not doing really well, and that's why the child does not have food at home. There's also a possibility that the child, the parents or the caregivers are not paying attention to the child. There's no supervision to the child. Nobody's, or the child is living by themselves and nobody's looking after them. If you remember Stanley Ka Dabba, if you watched that movie, nobody knew that Stanley, the character in the movie, was living in a situation that was so, in a way, heartbreaking. Like, there was no supervision, there was nobody taking care of the child. The child was working at a small cafe or tapri. So neglect, you really have to pay attention that it is happening. Otherwise, nobody will even come to know. But yes, not taking care of a child's needs, their whatever needs, not just physical but emotional needs, that is considered as neglect. Yeah, I hope the explanation will help you understand child abuse better, and I hope that there is no confusion over it. In case there is confusion, do write to us. We'll definitely connect with you and talk about it in detail. So what is child sexual abuse? So yes, what is child sexual abuse? Any act using a child for the sexual gratification of the more powerful person. Yeah. When we look at this definition, there are some key aspects that we will pay attention to. One, there is a child. The intention behind the act is to receive sexual gratification, and the person who is doing it is more powerful than the child. Yeah. So a child, any individual below the age of 18 is a child. Sexual gratification is the intention behind this act, and the person who's doing it is more powerful. And when we talk about power or powerful person, it's not just somebody who's physically powerful than the child. So yes, physical strength is a form of power, but that's not the only form of power. A powerful person can be somebody who is influential, politically influential, is financially influential, somebody who's in a position that they can influence people. Yeah, someone the child trusts, or someone the child loves. Even these positions can make a person very, very powerful in comparison to the child. Age can very sorry. age can be a factor that can make someone powerful. Yeah. So power is not just money or age or physical strength. Power can manifest itself in various forms. So look around you and see who are more powerful than the child. And it's not just in terms of sexual abuse, but when you look at a child and when you, in comparison, when there's an adult, you'll see that there is a huge disparity in the amount of power they hold over each other. Yeah? And that's why abuse is not just about sexual gratification or the sexual act, but all of these together, they play an important role in sexual abuse happening. Okay. So we were talking about any act. Yes, there are different forms of abuse, and let's understand what are the different forms in which a child can be abused. So the first form of abuse is contact abuse, where there is some touch involved. There is some contact, some touching is involved in this form of abuse. First is penile-vaginal intercourse, where the penis is inserted in the child's vagina. Anal sex, where a body organ or an object is inserted in the child's anus. Oral sex, again, where any body organ is inserted in the child's mouth, or the child is being made to touch somebody else's genitals or sexual organs by using their mouth. Along with that, if the powerful person is touching the child's private body parts or making the child touch somebody else's private body parts. Yeah? Other than that, it's not just limited to private body parts. And that's one thing that we all have to understand when we talk about sexual abuse. That it's not just limited to sexual organs or private body parts. A child's any part of their body, if it's being touched or fondled by a more powerful person, and the powerful person is receiving sexual gratification by, say, touching the child's arms or their back or their thighs, even that is considered as sexual abuse. And when we talk about sexual abuse in legal terminologies, it's contact abuse would be called penetrative sexual assault or sexual assault. The next type of sexual abuse is non-contact form of abuse. Non-contact form of abuse is where there is no touch involved. Nobody is touching the child, but there is still sexual abuse happening. How? Either by exposing the child to pornographic content or making the child watch others when they're indulging in any sexual activity, or making the child or exposing their genitals to the child. It's called exhibitionism. Yeah? Or talking to the child about sexual activity, or passing comments which are sexual in nature. Which they could seem harmless comments, but at the core of that comment, it is a sexual comment. These comments could be sounding very generic. Oh, tum to bahut badi ho gayi ho. You've grown up so well. But the way it's said, the way it is, the way the person is talking about the child's body, it is very sexual in nature, and that's what makes it a non-contact form of abuse, and in legal terminology, sexual harassment. Yeah. Other than that, watching the child or looking at the child when they're taking bath or changing clothes, using a toilet, and the one more form of non-contact abuse that is that we'll be talking about is online sexual abuse. Yeah. So what is online sexual abuse? There's a lot that can happen online. Yes, internet is in current days, in current scenarios, I think we all are using internet, right from our children in grade 1. My niece is in nursery, and she also has online classes these days. So everybody is using internet these days. But at the same time, let's also talk to our children on about how to keep themselves safe online, and also equip ourselves with information so that we know how to help children in case they experience something unsafe online. So yes, abuse can also happen online, where the abuser can build a relationship so that abuse can happen online. The child feels pressured or feels manipulated into doing things which are sexual in nature. At the same time, the child child may be manipulated into believing and thinking that they can't talk about this to anybody uh, because of any threat, because of emotional manipulations. So yes, online sexual abuse can also happen, and there are different ways it can happen. Something like a cyber stalking. Uh, if a person is constantly following a child online, what they're doing, whom they are with, what are the places they visit, who are the people they are seen with, constantly liking, commenting on all their posts, all their photos. Other than that, cyberbullying, putting up posts about children and then writing mean comments, writing humiliating content, or posting humiliating content about them. It's called cyberbullying. Making children post photos, videos of themselves without when they're not wearing clothes, or where their private body parts are visible. Making children post such videos online. Yeah, sending videos, photos, or text messages to children which are again sexual in nature. Yeah. All of these forms are a form of online sexual abuse. Yeah. Uh, Sextortion is again one more form of sexual abuse that can happen online, where somebody could blackmail children that if you don't do this, or if you don't either give something financially, give them money, or give them some monetary, where they're making some monetary gains by blackmailing the child, or making children do something sexual in nature. Yeah? So that is sextortion. And distributing content, child abuse material online, even that's a form of sexual abuse. Yeah. So all these things can happen online. And why are we talking about it? Again, I would like to take a pause here for all of us and take a deep breath. Whoever is watching right now, let's take a deep breath right now and tell ourselves that, right, it's okay, we are equipping ourselves with information so that we can help children better. Because talking about sexual abuse can be equally overwhelming for all of us, and it's not easy talking about it, it's not easy hearing about this. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's all right to step away for a moment, have a drink of water, and come back. It's perfectly fine. Yeah. So moving on. Um, okay. So what are the statistics on child sexual abuse? In 2007, there was a study done by Ministry of Women and Child Development. It was done in 13 states, and there were around 12,447 children who were involved in the study. What this study came up with was, these were some of the findings of this study. More than 53% of children in India have reported that they have experienced one or the other kind of abuse. Yeah? Both boys and girls are equally vulnerable. Breaking a really huge myth that boys are not abused sexually. Boys don't need to be safeguarded, or boys don't need education, or boys don't need information on how to keep themselves safe because they're boys. Nobody's going to abuse them, nobody's going to harm them. No, boys are equally vulnerable. So yes, we have to protect our girls, but it's not just girls. We have to protect all our children who are there. Yeah? 50% of sexual offenders were known to the child. Again, breaking one more myth that says abusers are strangers, or abusers are people who are drunks or drug addicts, or people who live on the dark corners of our society. Nothing like that. These are people whom we know or people whom we trust. So 50% of offenders were known to the child, or were in position of trust, whom people trusted, whom parents or children trusted. National Crime Record Bureau, it's a national agency. What it does is it collates all the cases that are reported in the country, all the cases of crimes that are reported in the country. In 2018, they released their data, and this data suggested that 10% of cases, there was 10% increase in the crime against children reported in 2017. So in comparison to 2017, in 2018, there was a 10% increase in the number of crime against children. Crime against children is all crimes, all the crimes, and not just sexual abuse crimes. Okay, of which 29% cases were of child sexual abuse. It has also been observed that there's an increase in the child sexual abuse material that is available online. And then again, since the lockdown, there's a spike in the number of the amount of content that was available online. So just for an example, if there were 10,000 images online, then the number has very suddenly spiked since the lockdown, since 2019, since the lockdown started. All right, so let's move on. Okay, now what we want to talk about is let's understand who are more vulnerable. Children who are more vulnerable to getting sexually abused. Children who are with low self-esteem. So yes, when we say children with low self-esteem are more vulnerable to sexual abuse, it does not mean that if a child who has low self-esteem will be sexually abused for sure. That's not what we mean here. They are more vulnerable to sexual abuse. Yeah? If we were to look at it from this lens, all children are vulnerable to sexual abuse because they're children. Because they're children, they all are vulnerable to experience something unsafe. But that does not mean that all children with low self-esteem will be sexually abused. That's not what we're trying to say. Yeah. So in case you see a child who is experiencing low self-esteem, maybe we can support them better. Maybe we can help them understand how to keep themselves safe, and that's one thing that we can do as a protective measure. But we do not mean that all children with low self-esteem will be sexually abused. Again, children coming from homes where there is, say, domestic violence, there are marital discords, there's financial instability, there is substance abuse, or there is persistent or terminal illness. Now, one thing that's common in all these scenarios is there is neglect. Neglect, either voluntary neglect where parents or the caregivers don't really care, or because they are so embroiled in their own lives, so very involved in what is happening in their own lives. Because of that, they're unable to take care of children. They're unable to supervise or give enough attention to children. So in any situation where there is neglect, the chances of children being abused increases. Yeah? Children who are overly fearful of adults. Children who are fearful of adults, again, if somebody is making them feel unsafe, in such situation, they'll find it very difficult to say no. So yes, when dealing with adults, there should be some healthy amount of respect, but fear with regard to adults can lead to more vulnerability. Children with parents who are too busy. Again, we are not talking about parents who are working and not spending their entire 24 hours with children. No, that's not what you mean. Again, if there is neglect, no supervision, it can lead to unsafe situation. That's all we mean when we say parents who are too busy. When there is no supervision, it can just lead to unsafe situation. Again, children without parental care, children who are orphans, or children who are unaccompanied, separated from parents, children living in institutions, street children, migrant children, all these children, again, they're in a situation where there is no supervision. And in terms of migrant children, I think we all have noticed, or we all have observed the crisis that migrant laborers faced when the lockdown happened. And then the entire situation of them moving, walking, not having a space to live, not having a proper place for children to live in. This situation can also make them vulnerable to sexual abuse. Children who are living with any kind of mental or physical disability. Children who have suffered from other form of abuse. Now what happens is, children who have experienced any other kind of abuse, if I have learned that I can't say no, I can't protest. If I protest, somebody will, if I say anything against abuse, if I try stopping them, I'll be abused more. So anytime I try to stop the adult from hitting me, they hit me more. The child has learned that I can't protest against this. If I protest or if I do anything more, I'll be abused more. So in such situation, children learn to adapt to abuse. That it will happen, I have to take it, and I can't protest against it. And that's why children who have suffered a form of abuse, them being more vulnerable to other kind of abuse is very high. Children who are stigmatized, children who are labeled that this child is a troublemaker. They don't have any genuine concerns. They're just trying to grab your attention. They're just trying to create unnecessary ruckus, and let's not pay attention to them. They're a troublemaker. Now, if a child has been stigmatized in such a way, has been labeled as a troublemaker, these children are again more vulnerable to sexual abuse, because even if they try to seek help and if they're labeled as troublemakers, there's a high possibility that nobody's going to listen to them. In terms of one of our partner organizations shared that if a child in present condition during the pandemic, if a child was infected, then only the child would be taken to the facility where they will be kept, where they were where they had set up quarantine centers. Now, this child who is separated can again face stigma because of this separation. That this child has been was infected and you can't touch them, and again this separation, this stigmatization can also lead to abuse. So stigmatization can also make children more vulnerable to sexual abuse. Yeah. Moving on. If we all were here in this room or in this meeting directly, and we were not across a screen on a very different platform, I would have asked you, do you think it affects children? Do you think it impacts children in any way? And I'm sure you all would have said that yes, it impacts children. Because yes, sexual abuse or any kind of abuse for that matter, it does affect children, it does impact children. And immediate impact can be seen on their emotions. So when a child is sexually abused, they can feel confusion, they can feel sadness, they can feel shock that someone I trusted, someone I liked did something like this to me. Yeah? They can feel fear that, how can this person do something like this? They could fear that person, they could fear the place, the situation they're in. They could feel guilt that if I didn't go there, or if I didn't wear something like this, or maybe because I said this, maybe because I did this, it happened with me. And sometimes the abuser also tells the child that, you know what, I didn't do this, you wanted it, you liked it, that's why I did it. Yeah? So children can also feel guilt that what the abuse was their fault and they did something wrong, that's why abuse happened with them. They could feel angry, and yes, there is anger towards self, which is guilt. Guilt is a form of anger that is directed towards self. So yes, they're feeling angry towards themselves, they're feeling angry towards the abuser, but there is also a lot of anger toward people who did not help. I came to you and I told you that something is wrong, I don't like this auntie or I don't like this uncle. But you didn't do anything. You told me you must have done something wrong. That's why uncle scolded you, and that's why you're saying you don't like uncle. But you never asked me why I don't like uncle or why I don't want to go with that auntie. So there is a lot of anger towards people who did not help rather than the abuser, because in the child's mind the abuser is a bad person. They did something bad. But you people were nice. You were my loved ones. You were people. You are the ones who said we'll always take care of you, and you didn't help. And last, shame. Shame regarding themselves, shame regarding their body, that my body is dirty, that my body is bad, I am bad. So these are certain things that a child can emotionally experience when abuse happens. Yeah? And when abuse has begun, these are certain visible indicators that a child can show, and these are certain indicators that can help us understand if the child is facing some kind of abuse. Having said that, also keep this in mind that these are just indicators that will help us observe, that will help us go and talk to the child and ask them, understand what is happening, what is affecting them, or why they are behaving in this way. Other than these sure indicators that you can see on our screen, other than these sure indicators, the rest are just indicators to help us understand that the child is experiencing something unsafe and we need to talk to the child. In behavior, what we can see is social withdrawal. A child who is very forthcoming, is very outgoing, is not very outgoing anymore. And these changes are happening suddenly. They are not happening over a period of time. Gradually, the child is maturing or changing their interests. Not like that. These changes are happening like this, overnight, very sudden. Yeah? So social withdrawal, increased hostility or aggression. A child who is very quiet and would not hurt something or hit back, all of a sudden is showing a lot of aggression. Overly pleasing behavior. Why would a child try pleasing other people? Because of abuse, the child is feeling that I am not worth anything, I don't have any value, or I'm not good enough, or I'm a bad person, or I'm a bad child. Yeah. Now, when I do things for others and when they appreciate me, I feel good. So I do whatever possible so that people will say nice things about me. People will say good things to me and say that you're a good boy, you're a nice child. And because of that, sometimes children can also resort to overly pleasing behavior. Drastic change in achievement patterns. All of a sudden, the child was a really good, academically doing well, all of a sudden is not doing so well. Or a child who was not like an average child, all of a sudden is doing phenomenal academically. Now, why this shift happens is equally important. So yes, a child is doing academically well is a good thing, maybe a cause for celebration for some of us. But let's also understand what is the motivation behind the change in the performance level. Is it because the child, to avoid all thoughts of sexual abuse, to avoid all thoughts coming regarding the abuse, they completely focus on their studies and they're doing really well academically. Yeah. What is the motivation? The motivation is to do well, or the motivation is to forget about abuse. So I just throw myself in studies and just try and forget all about abuse. What is the motivation? And that's why if there are sudden change in academic patterns, it's a sign that maybe let's have a conversation. And there could be something really as normal as a teacher changing or the child just showing more interest in these studies. But there's also a possibility that the child is just trying to forget about abuse and is focusing completely in their studies, and that's why they're doing well. and they're not doing well because of abuse, can't focus at all. In physically, if a child is experiencing psychosomatic illnesses. Now, what is psychosomatic illnesses? Psycho is your brain, your uh, mentally, this brain part is your psycho, and your body is the soma. When something is off, something is wrong with me mentally. Not wrong as in mental illness, I'm not talking about that, but there is some stress, ongoing stress, and that stress is directly affecting my body. That is psychosomatic illnesses. And I'm sure we all have experienced some or the other form of psychosomatic illnesses. For example, when you're very, very stressed and you have this particular side of your head that hurts, not the entire head, or just your neck is hurting. Again, a sign of psychosomatic illness. In children, the most common things are stomach aches, fever, body aches, feet or legs hurting, headaches. These are some common psychosomatic illnesses. Now, when you look at psychosomatic illness, if you go to a doctor and get a proper diagnosis, there would be nothing wrong with the body. Why? Because it is not the body that's affected; it's the mind that's affected. The child is feeling very stressed, and that's why it's again it has a direct connection with our body. Our mind and our body works in tandem. So when one is affected, the other one is also affected, and that's why psychosomatic illness is a sign, a very strong sign that something is affecting the child, and we need to have a conversation. Yeah? Pain or swelling in genital area, repeated urinary infection. Again, some signs for us to understand if maybe something is off, and maybe we need to talk to the child and understand what is happening. Sexually, if a child is showing sexualized behavior, the way they talk, the way they behave, in general behavior has become very sexual in nature. Maybe they are observing somebody and imitating them. Maybe somebody is telling them, you know what, when you do this, you look very sexy, or when you do this, I like it when you dress up this way, I like it when you talk like this. So early sexual activity, again, there's a possibility that the child has seen something inappropriate and is imitating it, or there's a possibility that the child is being abused and the child is imitating it. Use of abusive sexual language, especially in cases where this language is not common in the spaces where the child is living. So this language is not used at home. This language is not used in their friend circle, in their school. In that case, it's a sign that I need to check what is happening exactly. Psychologically, eating and sleeping disturbances. If a child if a child is being sexually abused, then there's a possibility that they'll have trouble sleeping, either because of nightmares, or if the abuse is happening at night time, then out of fear that abuse can happen, they'll find it difficult to sleep. Feeling anxiety or indifference, constant fear that, oh my god, something can happen, or absolute indifference that I don't care what happens. Yeah, any form of extreme sign that something's off and we need to talk to the child. Depression, and yes, children can experience depression. So it's not that just adults experience depression, or just adults experience suicidal thoughts. Children can also experience depression and suicidal thoughts. Yeah, someone as young as 8 years old can have suicidal thoughts. Okay. Now, some sure indicators. If a child, someone below the age of 18, becomes pregnant, it's a sure indicator of sexual abuse. If a child is, if a child has sexually transmitted infection, again a very clear sign that something sexual abuse has happened. And if the child comes and tells you that I have been touched in an inappropriate way, or I have been touched on my private body parts, other than this, there are no sure indicators. Yeah. The rest of them, they're just indicators for us to, in a way, to help us understand that something's off, and I need to go and talk to the child and understand what is wrong. I hope this slide is clear to all of you, and if there are questions, again, do write to us. Now, why don't children tell us, or why can't they tell us? These are some of the reasons why they can't tell us. Sometimes they just don't understand that what happened with them was abuse. Like, it didn't hurt. I don't even know what happened. It just felt weird. I don't think they meant to be bad. They said it was just a day. Quite many times children don't have the awareness that what is happening with me is abuse. What is happening with me is unsafe. Nobody should do it with me. Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why children don't tell. Sometimes the fear of the person they love, if that's the abuser, the fear that they will leave me, I won't be able to meet them or be with them ever again. This fear can also make children not tell about their abuse. Yeah, there's also a possibility that the child may have liked abuse. If the child has been told that what is happening with you is love, I'm loving you, this is affection, this is how adults show love to children, there's also a possibility that the child may like abuse. But at the same time, let's also remember that the abuser knew what they were doing. The child didn't know what was happening with them. So if the child has been told that this is love and this is affection, there's a possibility that the child may like abuse. But again, it's the responsibility lies on the offender and not on the child. So no matter what happened, the abuse is never the child's fault. Children can also feel somebody, nobody will believe me, or they will be blamed for it. Mummy or papa will blame me, or they will scold me for it. Or sometimes children take up responsibility of protecting their parents. Like if I tell mummy, papa, they'll be so upset. They're already worried about so many things. If I go and tell them about abuse, it will be an added trouble for them. Because of this, also sometimes children don't talk about their abuse. So these are some of the reasons why children find it very difficult to talk about abuse. And with younger kids, if they're told that this is a special secret, there is a high possibility that children will not tell us because they promised that I will keep it a secret. Yeah. So if a child does not tell you, if a child takes their time to talk about their abuse, let's not blame them, let's not be angry with them. Let's try and understand that these are certain, talking about abuse is never easy. It's very difficult to talk about our abuse. So let's not blame children, let's be accepting, and let's try and support them in this difficult phase where they're trying to tell us about something that was again very difficult for them. Yeah. Okay. So next that we're going to talk about is how Arpan's program on keeping children safe. So Arpan has a program called Personal Safety Education Program, and it's a life skill module. It is developed in a way so that we empower children with age-appropriate information and skills so that they know how they can protect themselves and how they can prevent abuse from happening. Along with that, this program is also aimed at helping adults realize what their role is in keeping children safe. And through this program, we try and give these important messages to children. One being they're empowered to identify any unsafe situation or any unsafe touch, both online and offline. This program will also help them refuse such unsafe touches and situations and get away from them. Help them identify the support system and also help them seek support from people. So not just identify but also understand how do I seek help from them and know that abuse was not their fault. And all these resources are available online as well. So it's not just having an in-person session is the only way to teach children about personal safety. But these resources are also available online at www.urbanelearn.com. There are different courses for different age groups. So there's a course for children aged between 4 to 7. Then there's a different course for ages 8 to 10 and 11 to 30. Along with that, these courses are also available in 3 different languages, that being English, Hindi, and Marathi. They can be accessed from anywhere in the world. And we've tried to make it as interactive as possible so that children can engage in this course and they can learn more about how they can keep themselves safe. Along with that, this coursework is also approved by the Ministry of Education, and it's available on the Diksha portal. It's a platform for teachers that is there, and Urban eLearn, the course is also available there. Along with that, we have also resource material for caregivers, a facilitators course for parents and teachers. Along with that, various other documents, so that in case we are not able to answer all your questions in this 1 hour session, you can refer to these documents to understand the issue of child sexual abuse better, and also to understand answers for all the questions that you could have. Now, how it will help? It will help children identify safe and unsafe situation, also set up boundaries for themselves online, offline. Yeah. These are some of the best practices for adults that we can follow to ensure that our children have a safe experience online. So first and foremost, understanding technology assets. A lot of us struggle with technology, and I think in this lockdown, we all have learned a lot about how to use technology. And this is something that we have to continue doing henceforth, to understand how does this technology works, how internet works, yeah? Being updated ourselves. And there are various tutorials online that we have access to via YouTube and Google. So going through these tutorials and understanding what are the things that I can do to protect children. Yeah? Communicate to children, talk to them about safety. And Urban's courses are there. You can do those courses with your children. And what will help, what it will do is it will give you a platform to initiate that conversation with children, to have a conversation around privacy and safety, and what is safe and what is unsafe. What are the things that I can do online and not do online? Along with that, also inculcating empathy in our children, that you know what, being hurtful or being writing mean things about others is not all right online either. So the way you won't like being hurt online, in the same manner, you can also not hurt anybody else online, or otherwise as well, not just online but offline as well. Along with that, having some ground rules, that not being friends with someone who's below the age of 18 on any social media platform, having the computers monitored, supervising what are our children using the internet for. So these are certain things that we can do to keep children safe online. And one of the crucial parts about today's session, how do we handle disclosure? So first and foremost, if a child comes to you and tells you that I have experienced something unsafe, or somebody has sexually abused me, so the first thing that we can do is appreciate the child, affirm the child, and tell them that thank you for telling me, you're very brave that you could talk about it. Telling the child that, you know, whatever happened was not your fault, and thank you for telling me. I will try to help you. Yeah? Demonstrate that you believe the child. Do not ask for proof. Has someone seen something like this happening with you? Was there anyone else who can vouch for you or say, this has happened for sure? What are we doing? We're saying that I don't believe you unless someone else comes and tells me that yes, this has happened. So demonstrate that you believe the child. Reassure that you will assist in getting help. Answer their questions honestly. We would suggest avoid touching children when they're talking about their abuse, because abuse has or could have happened through touch, our touch can also trigger them into thinking that is this person also doing something similar? Because in that moment when the child is stopped thinking about their abuse, they are not, they could be not even here with you, they could be lost in that memory of abuse. So even if you feel that I should console the child or I should hold the child, ask for permission. When you ask for permission, you are giving them that agency or that control on their body back. Like you decide whether I can hold your hand or if, or you can just offer your hands that if you feel like it, you can hold my hand, I'm here for you. Yeah? um, if a child is asking you, will you keep this a secret, tell them why you can't keep it a secret. What we can promise them is we will not tell everybody about it. We will only tell those people who can help you in the situation. So I will tell you, say you are a support person. So maybe you can say that I will have to inform your parents about it, because they are someone who will help us in supporting you better, who will help us in helping you better. So inform the child that I will only tell those who will help you and not everybody who has no involvement in this situation. Yeah. Uh, Identify the child support system and also identify your own support system who can help you in the situation as well. In terms of if the abuse was happening online, don't delete everything or those videos or messages, don't delete everything just like that. Make a copy of it, because in case you go ahead and report it, you need some evidence. So save all these things, emails or messages, securely. And a regular follow-up may be required when dealing with child sexual abuse. So, talking to the child on a regular basis, looking, just dropping in and saying, hi, how are you? Do you want to talk about it? You can talk to me at any time you feel like you want to talk about anything, about your thoughts, about your feelings. I'm there for you. Yeah? And very difficult to do, I understand, but keep calm and believe the child. Yeah? And these are certain things that we would advise you to not do. Do not panic, do not blame the child or pressure the child to talk. It could be very difficult to come out with all the details or all the information immediately. So do not pressure, do not ask questions aggressively, because the child can get scared that, oh my God, something really is off, like everybody is panicking or asking me so many questions. They could just get confused. Do not ask the child to forget or adjust with what has happened. We cannot forget, and if we leave it, if we do not address it, the abuse can keep on happening again and again. In that, because of that, we advise that do not make the child adjust to what is happening to them. Do not make the child repeat the story again and again, or confront the offender in the child's presence. Of course, we don't know what the offender has told the child or has threatened the child with. They could have told the child that if you tell somebody about it, we will hurt your family or we will hurt your sibling. So, in such situation, there's a possibility that the child may completely back out and say, "Oh, nothing like this has happened. I was making up a story." Yeah. So because of that, we always recommend that do not confront the offender in the child's presence. If at all you want to confront the offender, do it separately where the child can't see or hear what is being talked about. Okay. And the last bit of our session is understanding the law that is there for protection of children from sexual abuse. The law is called POCSO Act, and the full form of it is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. It came into power in 2012, but it was amended in 2019, and hence Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2019. So these are some of the major components. It's a law that is meant to protect children from sexual abuse who are below the age of 18. It is designed and it gives a huge importance to the best interest of the child. So the whatever uh, whatever steps or whatever actions that will be taken should be in the best interest of the child. It's a gender neutral law. So the victim can be of any sex or gender. Even the offender can be of any sex or gender. Yeah, it covers all forms of sexual offences. It covers contact as well as non-contact forms of abuse. And the burden of proof has been shifted upon the accused. The accused has to prove that they haven't done anything, not the child. Yes, the child, the victim will have to present evidence that so and so has happened, but the burden is upon the accused that they have to prove that they haven't done anything like that. And there are penal provisions for various offences that are covered in the act. And these are the people whom you can report. You can report to your local police station. You can report to child welfare committees. You can report to National Commission for Protection of Children, Child Rights. It's NCPCR. It's an online portal, and you can report any case of child sexual abuse on their website as well. Along with that, you can report to Childline 1098. You can also report to them. In cases of cyber crime or cyber reporting, you can report on National Cyber Crime Reporting Portal. You can report on armindia.org. And there are all social media platforms, they have their own mechanisms to report any kind of inappropriate behavior that could be happening on their platforms. So you can report to all these people in case you come across any case of sexual abuse, yeah, online or offline. And these are some of our helpline numbers. You can reach out to us for any kind of support you require in terms of, say you know somebody who needs help, who has undergone child sexual abuse in their childhood. They can reach out to us, or if you want to ask us any questions, or if you wish to conduct similar sessions in your network, you can also reach out to us here. And that's it. This is the last bit of our session. You can also follow us on our various social media platforms. We are there on Facebook, Twitter, and also Instagram. And that's our website link. All right. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope this session helped you understand this the issue of child sexual abuse a bit more. It's a vast topic that requires a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue around it to break the silence that is surrounding it. So I would really would like all of you to go ahead and have conversations around on child safety, on child sexual abuse, so that we as a society are more aware, more vocal about it, and we can protect our children better. So thank you so much. Thank you, Andrea and Baby Chakra, for having us here and allowing us to reach out to more people through your app and through your network.